Welcome to The InEVitable, a podcast by MotorTrend. Inspired by the future, designed for the now.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The InEVitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast, our podcast on the future of mobility. I forgot to ring the bell. That was my Jonny Lieberman impression. If you missed it, he is not here today. He is chilling in Frankfurt or Austria. He's on some press boondoggle, I think driving Audis on ice. There's a fat ice race going on, F.A.T. You should look it up. It's very cool. But he's not here, which is somewhat ironic because it's his buddy we have on the show today. A very fine British gentleman by the name of Justin Lunny. He's the founder and CEO of Everrati. And this episode, I guess, is about the future or the current state of electric Resto mods. These are vehicles, iconic vehicles, as you'll learn, being converted to, gasp, horror of horrors, electric vehicles. Yes, we've had at least a couple of folks on to talk about what they're doing in this space. There's a lot of folks in the automotive industry, in the aftermarket, that are converting vehicles from internal combustion to electrification. But Everrati has a somewhat unique take on this, both in the types of vehicles they're doing and the quality, the price, and the approach. It's a fantastic conversation. It's very soothing because you don't have to listen to me and this American twang I got. You'll listen to Justin and his very posh British accent as he explains what an Everrati vehicle is, how they go to market, and what the driving experience is all about. So without further ado, Justin Lunny, founder, CEO of Everrati Automotive Limited. All right, so Justin Lunny from Everrati, thank you for coming in.
Absolute pleasure. Pleasure to be here.
I understand you actually flew from London to be on the podcast.
I did indeed.
Oh
yeah.
my God.
Yeah. I mean, I've arranged some travel around it, but yeah, it's great to be here.
I hope you had other business, like much more
Indeed.
important than this. Okay. Well, I know you've been asked this question many times before, but can you just summarize what Everrati's mission is?
Yeah. Look, our starting point really is keeping incredibly iconic cars on the road and treating them with respect and dignity. But underlying all that is a technology business. So really we surface the technology that we're developing and the powertrains we're developing through these cars. I suppose in some ways a bit of a lower cost way of exposing that than Rimac did with their Nevera, but we're building the brand, and then it's very much about best in class powertrains, I guess, and how we take that to market.
Okay. I noticed you didn't say EV in there, but is it primarily, exclusively?
It's exclusively EV.
Battery electric.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that's
and
right.
Converting iconic vehicles.
Yeah.
Starting with 964 Porsches.
Yeah, that's right. So we kind of took the view that we have four vehicles that we focus on. As you say, the 964. There's a Land Rover series, a Mercedes Pagoda, and actually a GT40. All very, very different types of vehicles, as you know. But the key thing aligned to that is we have our own VCU and software that means that we can do everything from a Land Rover to a GT40 and beyond with the same architecture and infrastructure, so that we can kind of almost do any vehicle. But I suppose the key thing here is that each model we create is about 4,000 or 5,000 hours of development. So it's not just swapping, it's considering weight distribution, and various other things.
What's a VCU?
Vehicle control unit. Okay. So it's kind of the software stack and the hardware that controls the vehicle.
Okay. All right. You said respect and dignity, treating iconic vehicles with respect and dignity. I have to apologize in advance because neither respect nor dignity is what you will get in the comment section of this podcast from a certain, I'll call it faction,
indeed, of
automotive enthusiasts who, frankly, think the idea of removing the internal combustion powertrains of some of these vehicles, the essence, indeed, and replacing it with soulless, lifeless, soundless EV powertrains is anathema to high-performance automotive enthusiasm.
Yeah.
put another way, they hate this idea. What do you say to the crowd that is invariably going to be in the comment section of our YouTube clip, of our YouTube show, and the social media clip when they hear about what you were doing?
So not the first time we've heard this. So I think the key thing here to say is that we're doing this to keep these cars on the road as opposed to ruin them. It's funny. I'm actually going to see Magnus Walker this afternoon, and we're doing some driving up at Angeles Crest. And I think, what people find when they drive these things is they are different. They're not the same. But we're not doing it to the holy grail cars. The cars we start with are typically a 964 Tiptronic 204, right? And the reason we can get hold of them is because no one really loves them, being perfectly honest. They're not the holy grail cars. The Tiptronic, it's of that era. The Land Rover series is slightly different. What we do is make it very, very usable. So I think for us, it is a different experience. But I suppose what people forget is that electricity is the heart of everything we do. Electrical signals in everything we do. And I guess for us, it's about keeping something and indeed giving it entirely new life. And that's what's exciting for us. We have people in our cars that would never dream of buying the gas version. So in other words, they love the shape and the iconic nature of a car, but they've never actually owned an original, which is kind of interesting.
Okay. I want to come back to that you're taking vehicles that are not the most desirable, because it seems like, every used Porsche values have gone like through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Like astronomical. Especially anything air cooled, is going to be highly sought after. But I'm even seeing folks that are getting into like the most unloved, at least in this country, has been like the 996, right? Like nobody wants the fried egg headlights, but those are even starting to climb up in value, especially when you talk about like the performance end of those, the GT3s, like obviously the turbos. I'm actually quite surprised because 964s are quite hard to find here. I mean, is your client base U.S. mostly, or is it in the U.K. or
So I would say 70% of our clients are U.S. So we have, in fact, North America generally. So we have. We just delivered our first Canadian client car actually up in Vancouver. So she's a tech entrepreneur. We've got a car client in Washington State, NorCal, Southern California, Palm Beach, Florida, the Hamptons, Nantucket. So they kind of, they're where you might expect, really. Okay. The price point for our cars, because of the levels we go to, is not inexpensive. We're fairly clear about that. And I think with the Porsche, it's probably the most difficult for people to understand why you might do that. Right. But again, starting with a Tiptronic, which is not the best of all 964s. But I agree with you. It's really interesting. We have some younger clients talking to us about doing the likes of a 996, which is, I had a C4S back in the day, which I absolutely loved. As you said, the fried eggs are not, necessarily the most beautiful to some people, but a guy I was talking to, his bedroom wall car actually was the 964 Turbo, a 996, should I say, Turbo. And he, that's what he wants. So it's kind of an interesting play.
Okay. If we're focusing on a 964s with a Tiptronic, what about the folks who say, "Well, just put a manual in it then"?
Yeah.
Like preserve it that way. Like, what are you doing? Why take out? Isn't the characteristics of the powertrain, even on a base 964, is pretty good, right?
Oh, it is absolutely, and it's a great engine, right? And I think everything we do is technically reversible. So we kind of have that in the background to say, look, if things change, if by some magic there's a magic fuel that not just is synthetic and but is not emitting anything, which there isn't right now, as we know. Our clients, they tend to be people who are very climate aware. They tend to be tech generally, so they tend to be people. And we've got a Bay Area client, Matt Rogers, who's the co-founder of Google Nest. He openly said, he loves cars. He would never drive a gas car again, but he loves cars. So, what do you do in that scenario? So I think it's horses for courses. We're doing very low numbers. We're not going to take away, all of these cars. And I think, you're right. It's a very it's a great engine. But I think, again, we can create something from that is very usable. A lot of our cars people are using daily, and that isn't the norm actually in that generation of car, and really enjoying them. So yeah, it's not for everybody. But what I would say is that if we want to keep some of these beautiful shapes, and designs on the road into the future, and in some countries that's more prevalent than others. If you look at parts of Europe, certainly into Norway, as they're kind of it's pretty much 100% EV in terms of new vehicles. And that just socially aware individual that wants to drive something that's really cool but no longer emitting. So it's a slightly different, I think most of our clients are not your traditional car guy or girl.
Right.
They just happen to love cars, and now they want something that's, that's zero emissions and cool, I guess.
Okay. Well, I think probably some who are watching like, well, get to the brass tacks here. What are we talking about? What are the specs? What's the price? And let me just preface this by probably in the social clip, and maybe if we can throw it on screen. I was driving by when I was parking. I saw that your vehicle, you parked it out on the street.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's the same one I think Jonny drove.
That's right.
That's all over your website.
Yep.
Along with Johnny's quotes, by the way. In fact, I texted
Plagiarism.
him. I texted him. I said, Whoa! Is this some kind of collusion here? Did you get paid to be all over this website? Like, is this a conflict of interest? He's like, no, I didn't get paid at all.
No.
I said, well, you should have.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Johnny's quotes and I think pictures of him are all over the Everrati. What Everrati's website is?
Yeah, Everrati.com.
Everrati.com.
Yeah.
You can, if you miss looking at Johnny's face for some reason, you can go on and look and see all the wonderful things he said about your vehicle.
Yeah.
In particular, I think he drove this. What color green is this? It's like an emerald green.
It is oak green.
Oak
so it's
green.
the original oak green, not the new oak green that
Okay.
I think some of the new Porsches have. It has Bridge of Weir, leather, beautiful tan, green over tan. It's an RSR look. Clearly, it's not an RSR. So again, it started as a lowly narrow body Tiptronic, but the key thing with us is everything's taken back to the frame, to the chassis. That is then treated to make sure it's 100% straight, so selected and the like. And then it's built back up, integrating the EV powertrain whilst it's being back up. So things like, low and high voltage looms, new dials, switchgear, carbon fiber panels, so the front and rear fenders, the hood, the roof. So we have done everything we can to lighten that car as far as possible. And that car is about 40 pounds lighter than a 964 Turbo. So
with everything,
everything
as it sits,
as it sits there. And that's the kind of key thing for us is our team are used to, my team is ex-McLaren, Zenvo, Rimac, JLR, Bentley, you name it. So very, very high-end engineers. And I guess they're used to doing full vehicle programs. This is a full vehicle program. They're just starting with, a beautiful chassis like the 964. So
does it have roof wheels on it? Is that what
no? These are
those?
HREs, but they look very.
Yes.
They're definitely roof inspired.
Beautiful gold wheels.
Yeah.
This oak green is fantastic. You'll see it. I took some pictures. We'll put it up with the story. Power.
It's around 500, so it's about 3.7 to 60, which is enough. I think we are looking at a next generation of 911, so moving on from the 964 at some point, and we're using some of our latest tech in that version, which is things like Helix motors that are in the Lotus Evija, they're in the Valkyrie. So we have access to some of the really, really cool tech in the UK.
What motors do you have on it?
So in this one, it actually utilizes a large drive unit, a Tesla large drive unit with brand new batteries, and all the everything else is kind of refined for that vehicle. Whereas something like our GT40 has twin helix motors, it's 800 horsepower. So it's kind of it's kind of horses for courses. That's a lot of fun. I'll have to bring that next time.
Okay. And it battery is how big?
62.
62.
Yep, 60. In fact, 63. 62 usable. But it's kind of it's one of those cars that I think suits the Tesla unit. If you move on to say the 993 and others, and dare I say 993, because I'm guessing that will get some comments as well. But actually, it's completely different architecture, as you know. So the rear suspension, the trailing arms and what have you. So it's a very different setup, basically. But we've got some great people on our team, as I say, and actually just looking at the cars the way we do. Again, it's all about weight distribution, making sure that they feel right. Now, they might not sound the same, but they have to feel like a Porsche.
We'll talk about sound in a second. So
Yeah.
where'd you stash all the batteries?
That is on the Porsche. It's front and rear, so it's about 2/3 rear, a third in the front. So
Rear being is there no rear seats?
no rear as in rear engine
Rear
compartment.
only in the okay. Nothing under no space under the car.
So we don't take so right now we don't take anything away from the original kind of body and chassis of the car. Okay. So we don't cut it. And that's a big thing for us. Again, we generally want to respect these vehicles. It's like having a brownstone in New York. You don't want to cut it, and you want it to be as it should be, but with the latest technology. Okay.
So then, the large drive unit's fairly compact. Yeah. And you can put essentially the engine bay.
Yes,
with
exactly.
Batteries, and then up in the front trunk area.
So power electronics. So on the vehicles we're doing right now, we have power electronics. We also have the home is it the Type 1 or the slower charger in the front, and then we have the CCS in the rear. Okay. And there's still some frunk area. It's not huge. It's bigger than SF90, but it's kind of there's not a great deal there. Bag we can make one for that, obviously. And then the options are endless around interiors and trimming and what have you.
Transmission.
So again, it's basically a Quaife differential, so limited slip differential in that particular car. And then some of the other things we'll talk about in a second around some of the other tech we're looking at moves the game on again massively. So, but again, my guys are engineers. They're looking at latest tech. They're looking at some really cool. We've just had access to the McLaren silicon carbide inverters for some of our vehicles, and again, we're kind of moving the game on in some of these areas.
But no shifting, single speed.
Single speed, and the reason for that is. I don't know if you've ever driven a swap, which is manual, but people will either leave it in second or fourth. There's no real value to it. It's a point of potential failure. It's weight that you don't need. It is. So it's very much point and go, point and square, as it were.
Okay. Yeah. All right. More rage-inducing potential
Absolutely.
There, but bring it. We'll keep talking about it. Range and charge time.
Yeah. So range on the current Porsche is around 200. We've got in the UK we've got over 200 on a good day. 220. But
220 miles on a 62 kilowatt hour battery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But what I would say is it's so dependent, as you know, on tire diameter, but also and we've got some pretty big rubber on that particular car. Sure. But it's what I would say is we've got clients that use them as dailies, so that might be in San Francisco, drive out to Bay Area and back, maybe the odd square at the weekend. So it's kind of it's more of an A2A car, I would say. We have a lady in London who uses her Land Rover series every single day to drop her kids at school. She's the lady with the cool Land Rover.
And are those getting around the same range?
They are getting less range. So the original Land Rover series only did about 155 miles, would you believe, to a tank. We get about 150. So it's a similar feel to it.
And this is when you say series 1?
Series 2A.
Series 2A. Okay.
Yeah, 2A and 3 have been the most popular. We're actually building one for a client right now who Hampton's based, New York Hampton's based, but I was test driving them on our facility last week. So we have our facility is perfect. It's an ex-US Air Force base in Oxfordshire. So we've got track, we've got off-road, we've got everything if anyone wants to come and see us. So the series is so refined, and that's what I love about these things. Is kind of we're not just swapping them, we're making them just enjoyable to drive, and that's
We'll come back to that because I'm fast. I'm a big Land Cruiser guy, but I love the iconic square body 4x4s. So about 200 to 220 miles of range for the 964. Charge speed. No, what?
So I can't remember the exact charge speed, but we certainly in normal use on a pretty fast charger, you can pretty much get to 80% from 20% from about 20 minutes, something like that. Okay. So it's very usable. Yeah.
And 200, 220 is fine if you're not going to be road tripping these cars. Anyways, no. As a daily driver, that's totally fine. And most of your clients probably have a home charger, so no big deal either.
They do.
Okay, drum roll. How much?
450 for a build. Exactly. It's I mean, value. No. But I think the key thing there is it's full carbon body. So I was with, I'm sure you know Clive at Area. So Clive builds our cars. As you know, they built the first X number of Singer vehicles. So we very much about, again, high quality builds. These are all built in Irvine.
Man, Clive does everything. He originally was doing ProDrive when it came to the US. He was so WRC cars, like insane. And since then, recently his name came up with something else. So
I think is it Telio and
Tello. That's right. He's building their cars as well.
Yeah.
Okay, Clive. We got to get Clive on apparently. So
we do. In fact, I'm seeing Simon actually next week as well. Simon Sproul.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
So it's
Simon's
you know what?
Yes, I know all the.
It's a small
I know
world.
all the cool Brits.
Yeah,
apparently.
Absolutely.
Okay, so 450 puts you in the realm of Gunther Works and Singer, would you say, from a Porsche? Do you like the word Resto mod, or you don't like the word Resto mod?
Do you know, I don't mind it at all. Electromod, Resto mod.
Okay.
I think so. So Singer is
actually Singer's probably a little
a lot higher. Yeah. I mean, and what a great business.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean,
as long as you don't get sued.
Absolutely. So I think they are both quite substantially higher actually than us.
Okay.
But it's they started I think 250-ish 10, 12 years ago, whatever, and clearly they've moved up from there. The thing with us, I guess, is we're not just Porsche, and I think that's the kind of the culture that we're trying to address here, is that we love Porsches. I've had many Porsches over the years. But again, it's kind of if we were just Porsche, there's a big evolution to do there. But I think we're building a car, let's say, for a pagoda for somebody's summer house, and a Porsche, let's say, for another part of their life.
One of the other summer
houses.
And the Land Rover for their winter
retreat.
Okay, I
Yeah.
All right. I know people listening are like, what are you talking about? It's not eye-watering, actually, when you talk about the Gunther Works and the Singers. And those are, the engines they're doing, those are like gems and the whole
Absolutely.
thing. If you want to keep the internal combustion route. Let me ask you so we have the price, we have the power. I got a lot. We can talk to you about Porsche. Where do you source the vehicle? Does that price include sourcing the vehicle? Or does the owner have to come with it, or how does it work?
Owner has to come with it. So generally speaking, they won't have one, to be honest. So we will help them source. So they will buy the donor, the chassis directly, and we have supply chain pretty much the same as Singer actually. Okay. We'll just help them identify that donor. So the weird thing for us as well is historically there's always been a thing about, is it a originally US car, and that matters on certain cars, but I think given what we're then changing it into, there's the opportunity for example for Japanese imports or various others where it's less of a, I guess, heritage around where it started its life, because again we're completely rebuilding it and turning it into something slightly different. So but it doesn't include the donor.
Oh, it does include.
It doesn't include the donor.
It does not. Okay,
No,
so roughly, what is that? How much you get in a 964?
Right. So we just bizarrely found one for a client. I think that was about 75. I think again when Singer started out, they were in their 20s, and they've, funny old thing, gone up over the years. But you can pick them up actually in Europe and indeed in Japan for less. You just got to live with the fact that it's going to be on a boat for a bit.
And these are, what are your, what would you say are your qualifications for buying one? Is that that's got to, do you care about mileage? It's got to be rust free, or no, because you're going to take panels off?
Yeah, typically, so we, given the fact that we work with people that have worked with Singer before, they've got a great history and they know what they're looking for. So generally speaking, we'll rely on that kind of company to help source. Okay. Interestingly, Japan, as you may know, the quality of the cars, but also the information on the vehicles is extremely high. So generally speaking, that's the route. It's difficult actually in the UK because generally speaking, our climate is not kind of
the weather is
The weather is awful, and it's why I'm here for a few weeks now. But so it's much easier here in many ways than it might be somewhere else.
Okay, and then so let's say I'm one of your tech exec up in Northern California. When I take delivery, is it smog legal? You guys go through the whole thing? Like there's
go through carb.
Go through, you guys with the car was a gold sticker or whatever?
Something like that, yeah. And so that's all been done. And then that's just it's registered. So it's still registered as a say 91 964, but it's obviously now zero emissions EV as the powertrain.
Okay. And then do you ship with a home charger? Like you give them a level 2 charger?
So it varies on the client. Yeah, a lot of our clients. So we just actually built one for a client in Santa Monica. So he's had a brand new, beautiful home built. So he had that installed at the time. It varies. I personally at home I drive a Taycan as an example. Luckily I drive something that is I can charge from home. So it really depends on the client. Most of our clients have home chargers either already had one or now have them as a result.
And then are you the whole OEM side is moving towards NACS, the Tesla supercharger. Are you guys going to move
I think,
as well?
Yeah, we've been looking at it. The standard is, I'm sure was only really set late last year. So we didn't move before that. But I think on a lot of our cars, weirdly it helps on some of them as well that have a smaller gas fuel tank, kind of aperture than a, let's say, a CCS.
Yep.
So, for example, on our Mercedes Pagoda that we do, I believe we can fit an NACS in the rear, whereas actually CCS we have to do in the kind of the trunk area.
Okay, it's more elegant too.
It
looks nice. Does that as a small volume manufacturer, you still have to work directly with Tesla to get into their network? So
to a point, yes. And look, we've got partners in the UK that have done some of this already. And what I would say is, most of our cars don't use a Tesla power unit, so most of them use the Helix motor, which, as I say, is in the Avaya. So that, to be frank, is probably the most suitable motor for what we do because it's very, very small and power dense. In a package that, and I'm going to use kilos rather than pounds, and I apologise, but 30 kilos, very small form factor, up to 500 horsepower. So that's kind of the motor, which again you don't need in say a Pagoda, but the point is it's very power dense, so we can tune that motor to be just really, really smooth and power through the rev range as well, which isn't always the case with an EV motor, as I'm sure you know. So that's the kind of things that we're doing to kind of get the best driving experience we possibly can.
Okay, let's just get into it because I'm a Porsche guy. I will now disclose. I have a 1987 911 Turbo.
Lovely.
It's got about 60,000 miles on it. I never drive it. I wish I had more time to drive it. I have a small child. And this is, again, also another rage-inducing comment I'll make. I don't love aspects of driving it. It's got a really long throw. It's got the 4-speed, and it's just a super long throw, pretty notchy. I love the suspension. I love the lack of power steering on it, so you feel every inch of the road.
Right.
It makes a pretty good sound, but it's quite loud. It is like that kind of ear-filling roar. I know you don't do, or I don't know. You've never done a 930 or that?
So we've done a G series, yeah. So effectively,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. So we do. So our Porsche offering right now is starts with G series. We've done kind of what you might call an ST, so the original ST look. So we can do the backdate ST kind of look on G body. We put slightly less power in that because it's not quite set up to do as the chassis is not really ready as the 964. And then we start with 964. We do narrow body and the wide body version, but we've done we've done coupes, we've done cabs, we've done Targas, so it really depends on the use case. But yeah, G Series is actually a very good car for that.
Okay, so you are obviously a Porsche enthusiast.
I am.
Would you talk me out of doing an Everrati conversion, or would you say, oh, you should totally do it?
With your specific car?
Yes.
Do you know, I would probably say, let's go buy something that is less special than a turbo, and let's do it on that. We had, a true story, and this is, hopefully tells you a bit about us. We've turned down somebody doing a very, very special Porsche a 959.
Yes, thank God. All right.
Thank God. This is a gentleman in the Middle East who wants about 800 horsepower in a 959, and we said, look, that's not for us. So yeah, there are some cars out there, the Holy Grail things that you just don't touch, right? We are moving into a world where clean energy and EV and is inevitable. But I think it's not clearly for everything. In the same way as you buy a new home and you can't fit your money in the corner, so you cut a corner off it. It's different, right? So,
Right.
but I think for the kind of enjoyment, there are still horses. People haven't moved entirely away from the horse. So for enjoyment on tracks and other things, there is definitely a place for non-EV and some Holy Grail cars that we would never even go near.
Okay. That's great. I hadn't thought about that you would suggest. You should absolutely do it. Just don't do it to your car.
Exactly. We'll find you one.
Get something a little more miles, maybe a little rattier.
Less important.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, great. Let's talk a little bit about. Well, here's one thought. We had a personal friend of mine who does Moment Motors. These guys are out of Austin. Mark Davis, and they've done a couple of Porsches, but they actually seem to do a lot more Pagodas. Mm-hmm. And he did mention that we talked about the rage, the how the commenters were going to get after him, and they indeed did. But specifically the Pagoda, it was about like people have this romantic idea that because the car looks as gorgeous as it is, that the drive is equally gorgeous. And no, the powertrain on that car is pretty crap.
It really is.
I still want to just, as before we get off Porsche, just defend that you believe in your soul that the driving experience afterwards, particularly with that Tiptronic of the car as you started with, it is that much better.
Completely.
It is, and they're despite not having and please address the noise complaint, if you will. Yeah.
So, number one, definitely, I'd never say better because each to their own. But in terms of the weight's in the right place, the weight distribution is perfect. It's still 60-40 as Porsche intended. The overall weight is lower, right? So center of gravity is around the same. So again, this is not just chucking some battery. This is the engineering to get to that point is actually fairly advanced. It's different, and I think bizarrely, the car outside drives ever so slightly more like a Cayman actually than an original 964 because the weight's ever so slightly more inbound as well. So it's not quite as far out of the back wheel. So what I would say is it's different, but it's really enjoyable. It's do you like hot sauce on your steak or do you like something completely different? And it's kind of that sort of feel to it. And what I would say is people just tend to love it. And as you say, with something like the Pagoda, just going on to that, it's almost like don't meet your heroes. When you drive a 280's okay, but 230, it's not actually great. I mean, I had actually won it's actually a 250, interestingly, in the UK. So when I first decided we were going to do a Pagoda range, and the reason we do it is my dear uncle who passed away recently had one, and I'd always loved it. And so I bought one, and it was pre-pandemic, and people love them. They just love the shape, they love the design. And my as was for 5-year-old son, beginning of the pandemic, beautiful sunny day. I had a Ferrari in the garage. I had a GT3. I had a Taycan. Daddy, can we travel in style today? Can we take the Pagoda? And it's kind of, they just are beautiful, but to drive them, especially on a day-to-day basis, would not be something I would want to do personally.
Okay. All right. Fair. We'll stay on Porsche just for one other question. You're obviously a man of taste and distinction, and you're doing these wonderful things and upgrading and adding. Do you improve the value? Is the value of the car, and do you believe that going forward will these be more or less collectible than a 964?
Great question. So I think we've already had a situation where one of our clients moved a car on privately and actually the new buyer actually paid slightly over what he had paid, so he was very happy with that. I think it's going to be around partly the brand, making sure we can build a brand that is synonymous with quality, high-end engineering, but also I would say upgradability. So when you've spent fair chunk of change on doing something beautiful, in the same way, I guess, as a Gen 1 of anything, you're worried that Gen 1 is going to be obsolete and therefore going to reduce in its value. Our thesis is that actually it's the work of art you're buying, the beautiful Porsche, and then we will upgrade the technology over time. So, for example, the very first Porsches we did were 53 kilowatt-hour batteries. They're now 62. I have no doubt that will continue to evolve. And therefore, it's kind of, it's the structure of the home, the structure of the car, the structure of wherever you're buying it, you remain the same, but actually then upgrade it over time. So I think if we can continue that vein, my view would be, why wouldn't it be just as valuable, if not more valuable over time?
Okay. Do you track the values of other Resto modded, like on the market? Like, I don't follow them closely. I'm very curious if Singers and Gunther work cars. I suspect, given the premium they're paid, I don't know. Will the owner that sells one lose money? I don't know. Do you?
They're not, certainly not at the moment. They are. Yeah, I think so. I was actually out for dinner with a client and friend last night, and he has a turbo study, and he can definitely get.
It's probably the scarcity.
Yeah,
of those
precisely.
Vehicles. Okay.
Yeah.
Then let me ask you. This is my hot button one. Do you have thoughts on RWB cars? Again, horses for courses. They certainly wouldn't work in many restricted areas in London because you wouldn't be able to get them through the through the gap. They're not for me. But again, the great thing about Porsche is it's got such a rich history of people modding them and updating them. And I think that's, again, with us, yes, we're modding it to an EV, but actually the history of that happening, over time, maybe not with EV, but with other things on Porsche is so it's a culture, right? It's something that people have done forever. And again, it is technically reversible, but you genuinely wouldn't. And I think, again, I don't know, cutting the metal is that's not quite as reversible.
No, but we don't.
Oh, yours is.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Exactly. And I think, but you're absolutely right. And it's not for me. But again, each to their own.
Okay. Yeah, I can't decide whether RWB is, because as a Porsche owner, I'm like, do I like that they're taking perfectly good vehicles out of commission, and probably in 10 years' time we'll say, wow, they really just took out a lot of Porsches. Now my value's higher because of that. But the overall is that's not it's not a good thing for your soul. I don't think.
I would probably agree with that. Yeah, I would probably agree with that. Again, taste change, right?
Yeah, horses for courses, I think, is the theme of this one.
Indeed.
Okay, so we talked about the Porsche, we talked about the Pagoda. Let's stay on the Land Rovers you're doing. How does the 4-wheel drive system? Oh, sorry. One more question on the Porsche. What are you doing with steering and suspension?
So suspension, we offer tractive, fully adjustable dampers. Okay. So that works really well. I'll give you an example. So I was driving, I was up at the bridge in the Hamptons late last year, I think it was September, October time, in and around the Hamptons, fairly cool road, fairly good roads, stiffen the suspension up, it's great. Driving that then down Fifth Avenue, very soft suspension again, and you get the bobbing sensation of what you would remember in an early 911. So that's fully adjustable, and steering, again, it's really just tightening up everything around the rack, and we do. It depends on the client. There are people that want it to be more track inspired, I guess, and we can do that. We're very flexible on the whole setup of the car and geometry as well. Again, because we're not tampering too much with weight and weight distribution. Right. It can be. You can pretty much do whatever you would normally do on a gas car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Did you look at KW suspension?
We do. We have looked at KW. Interestingly, we use KW on our Pagoda.
Oh,
yeah, okay. Interestingly. So we have a pretty cool bag of bag of tricks, if you like,
like
kit
it.
bag. So yeah, it depends on the car really.
Okay. So back to the Land Rover. So how does the four-wheel drive system work?
So with us, so again, because we're from the UK, and in the UK there's very specific rules around what you can and can't do to a vehicle before it becomes what's called radically altered, and that changes its value and its registration. So we're very careful to ensure that, again, we're minimizing what we change on that car. So we use, for example, an LT230 transfer case on that car. So it's still selectable to and four-wheel drive. Nice. It's still selectable high and low ratio, although you won't need the ratios really. And then we have a custom transmission into the LT230, and that has a 55 kilowatt-hour battery pack.
Okay.
So again, it's very usable. Again, the key thing for us is not overweighting that car. There are people out there putting 75, 80 kilowatt hours in a series. It's not designed for it, and actually you're going over GVW, and so we're very, very, very careful to ensure the car is still absolutely safe when it comes to weight and those sorts of things.
So are you, like the Porsche, lower than the originally, or just
not
above,
lower,
not lower?
but we're way within GVW.
Okay.
And again, with that, we do upgrade the brakes, so discs, obviously, and power discs. We power steering, but it's still the original steering box.
Okay.
So it has it's got a charm.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say. And then we have our own drive modes.
Does it have like 15 degree on center before the wheels turn?
Pretty much. Yeah, it's not quite. I mean, certainly when you start. I mean, we had.
Sorry, and the steering wheel's like this, right?
Yeah, it's big. It's big. But so that's and it's kind of interesting. So I think some of the people we build these cars for, they just love that charm. I a bit of a story. I was driving one of our cars through Paris. We did an event at the Palace of Versailles, which is incredible. But driving through Paris, and a summer's day, the roof, the canvas roof is rolled up. People just love these things. You stop at lights, and people are coming to take photos, and that wouldn't normally happen in some of these cars, but in a Land Rover, for whatever reason. So it's so iconic, but then again, we just like to make it as user-friendly as possible. So again, one of our clients has, so it's the 3 front seats and then 2 benches in the rear, so technically 7 seats. Every seat is heated. She has teak decking, she has lambswool rug, she has 15 grand's worth of audio in this Land Rover series. So again, it looks from the outside to be a beautiful restored Land Rover, but it's very, very usable and enjoyable.
And does it have manual locking hubs? Do you have to, if you were to put in 4-wheel, you'd put the lever and then go out and turn? Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I had that on my old Hilux. That's
no. Again, it's people will probably never use it, right? But it's cool. And I think again, we're really bringing these cars back. Yeah, most of these cars. They built many thousands of them. One of our cars we acquired for a client or with a client, bought it on eBay, had plants growing out of it, right? So we really are bringing those cars back from the dead. So yeah, and again, people just love the look of them.
Yeah, I love the look of them. I've driven one a long time ago. How would you describe the pre-Everrati treatment driving experience of this? Is it? I mean, they're slow. Know they're very slow.
Yeah.
And they're noisy, but is there?
So what I would say, we also do a lot of back-to-back testing. So we might do. So we did this actually last year. We had a Land Rover Series 3 original combustion. We actually had a current Defender, and we had one of our Land Rover Series as well. And we got 6 or 8 people to come and try them and mark them just as you would, with an OEM testing against different manufacturers. So yeah, the original series, again, I don't know many people that would want to drive that very far. I think official stats are maybe 24 seconds to 60.
Yes.
We bring it down to about 13. So again, we could take it way lower, but we think it's about safety and what's right for the car. There's still noise, right? Because actually the LT230, is not the quietest thing. So above about 30 miles an hour, you start to hear that. which to some people is quite, they love the fact that it's still making a noise. But it's very smooth, and we have drive modes. So we've got, whether you want more regen, less regen.
Right.
It can, a good friend of mine has, in fact, he paid quite a lot of money to get a full restoration on a Series 2A, but combustion. And pretty much the minute he drove it, he said, I've done the wrong thing. I should have come to you. Because again, just getting up a small hill in some of these is quite difficult.
Yeah. So of those you surveyed, how many of them preferred the new Defender versus the...
A couple did, but we do it on all sorts of different metrics, right? So yes, it's performance. It might be steering feel. It might be, slight off-road. We don't do full off-road. But I think, overall... it wasn't kind of which one's the winner. It was more about which attributes do they prefer. Clearly, REV on every level beat the original. There were certain things. I mean, the size, the elbow room. It's little things like that if you're a bigger gentleman or lady are a bit awkward in a Land Rover series. But yeah, they're charming. They're really charming.
They look great too, and no ding on the Defender too. That that's our former SUV of the year winner, and that thing actually drives surprisingly well.
It really does.
It drives a lot smaller
than
it looks, and solid vehicle. Okay. Yeah. I forgot to ask you one other question on the Porsche. Is there any noise? There's wind noise? Is there any kind of gear noise?
Yeah. So you do hear, and again, depending on how much sound deadening you wish to have. So we can everything is specable, right? So the car that Jonny drove that's outside has a lot less sound deadening, so you can hear the motor spooling up. You can hear quite a lot of road noise, to be honest. Whereas we've got a UK client, he drives that again most days, but it's far more kind of a luxe spec, if that makes sense. So it hasn't got the roll cage and other bits and pieces. We do offer a sound package, so this is kind of an interesting one. So as I'm sure you know, in the combustion world, there are cars that might have a sport button. Mm-hmm. It's actually nothing to do with the engine sound. It's entirely synthetic. Mm-hmm. We can offer that same package. And interestingly, you may have seen on our website, we've got a Gulf livery demo car that has a sound package, and it's actually almost like a pancake-shaped speaker system that actually attaches direct to the chassis. So when it's on, it actually does reverberate. It feels kind of like an engine. But would you believe no client yet has chosen to have the sound?
What sounds is it? Is it amplifying the sounds of the vehicle? It's not playing a pre-recorded.
It's basically in the same way as... So again, this is the crazy thing. So we do some work with Superformance for the GT40. And when we first started that program, the guys at Superformance in the UK, or their representative, they know their cars, right? They really knew, and they know sounds. And the older gentleman that runs... that business said he was just one day, under the hood of a car, and he heard something coming down. He swore it was a big V8. Turned up and it was a diesel transit van, but had this system on it, right? So you can program any sound, but it's speed dependent. It's kind of, so it's funny. My wife's just taking delivery of a G580 EV, so the G-Wagon. Again, it's got the G-Raw, so it's a similar process to that, quite frankly. But on my Taycan, I leave the sound off 99% of the time anyway.
Speaking of rage inducing, I think the listeners have calmed down because you said nobody has taken you up on it, but it is available.
It is.
Okay. We're getting close on time here, but Jonny wanted me to ask you specifically to talk about perhaps some Lamborghinis you're working on. So LMO02s, is that correct?
Yeah. So we have a Middle Eastern client who has asked us to do initially the engineering study. And to give you an idea, so we don't do conversions, we do the whole vehicle. So we have right now an LM002 in our shop. To give you an example, the work that we go to, we've scanned that car. We've got 5.2 billion data points on that car. So we've got full 3D model, both inside, outside, and transmission tunnel. And we are right now looking at doing maybe up to 5 of these with full carbon body, with 800-ish horsepower, and incredible statement EV, essentially.
If you're young and you don't know what we're talking about, this is not a Lamborghini. This is not like your wedge.
It's not.
This is not the supercar V12 like power. This is a V12, but this is just Google it. This is Lamborghini's Jeep. This was originally designed as a military vehicle.
That's
There's
right.
supposed to be a 50 caliber machine gun in the back.
Which can be arranged.
Yes, can be very very cool looking. But so okay, if you're doing 5, he owns all 5.
No.
Okay, where do you source 5 of these?
Do you know what? I was in Dubai in early January, and I just chatting to a guy he's a car guy. He happens to work for Emirates, so he's a good friend of mine. He said, yeah, what are you doing on that particular car? And I said, well, look, originally we're going to do this one-off, but we may just do 5 as a limited edition. He said, I was just chatting to a car guy I know in Saudi Arabia. He's got 2. He just happens to have 2. He's a big car guy, right? So they are around, but they didn't make too many of them, as I'm sure you know. I think they made 260 of them in total. But again, I mean, we took the gearbox, we took the V12 out. We've taken well over a ton of combustion engine stuff out of this thing. So that kind of gives us a great opportunity for some pretty cool EV tech as well.
How big a battery would you put in something? Like you go over 100 kilowatt.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah, it would. I think it's about 120, something like that. Just over 100, 1 to 120, something like that. The way we were looking at the engineering is twin helix motor setup with an epicyclic gearbox, McLaren inverters, high-end batteries. So, for example, on GT40, we've got VDA batteries, 10 or 12C discharge, so very, very, very high-end 800-volt architecture.
You can in a Lamborghini, you can put the batteries in below the frame, like in between the frame rails, or in the tunnel. You
could. So what we tend to do is put weight where it was. So yes, the transmission tunnel, obviously under the hood. So it really depends on the vehicle itself. Key thing, I guess, is again, you don't want to take away. I mean, it's big. Weirdly, it's not big by some, clearly US SUV standards, but it's a pretty iconic car, right?
And this is the one that has everything kind of stuffed inside to improve the breakover and the ground clearance. Right? There's not a lot.
No, exactly.
No drive shafts hanging down.
And you may have seen the tires on this thing. I think like $7-8 a pop. They were designed to be driven on sand, basically. So they've got like a big rim and stuff.
Yes.
But,
and I think automatic inflation, like
that's
remote inflation.
I think you can have that. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
So is this vehicle being built?
We have it right now. He's taking the decisions on final spec, but and again, we've had interest now from 2 or 3 other individuals who may or may not want to do one. So it was going to be a one-off, but I think now we will look at potentially, as I say, 5 vehicles. And I think more than anything, again, there aren't that many around. It will be our kind of new halo kind of product, as you can imagine. And then, a lot of the other stuff that we're doing is B2B. So we're building powertrains for electric supercars and various other activities as well. So a lot of the learnings we're using from things like the GT40 and the likes of the LM are then being kind of transferred across as well.
Let's say he says, yep, I love it. Let's go. How long from start of the program to delivery, do you think?
It's probably around an 18-month program. So, we not just around just designing and kind of sourcing the correct components. Again, it's about tuning. It's all about, what is the right ramp rates and torque curve on that particular vehicle to get it performing as it should. And we've got maps. So we've done all the calcs on what the original torque curve looks like in each gear and the like. So again, it's a lot of fun doing that. And when you show a client the level of detail that you go to, it's kind of it's a great process, put it that way.
So you're saying this could be on the lawn at the Quail in 2026?
Something like that,
perhaps.
Yeah, something like that. We've got a couple of other projects we're working on that could also be there.
Anything else you want to talk? Anyone to talk about?
So the big thing for us now is using. So our big thing is learning, I guess, all the things we've learned in doing the different models we do, and then taking all of that experience and working through, how do we make that available to third parties? So we're working on right now, I think, 3 new EV supercar, sports and supercar programs where, they might want a fully integrated carbon tub with a high-end powertrain. When you consider the likes of the motors we're using are using in EV hypercars. If you look at the McLaren inverters, it's used in racing principally. So we're pretty unique insofar as we have a very, very strong supply chain of some of the best kit in the world, but also we've already pre-integrated it with our software. And then last but not least, we're now working on with a third party that is developing torque vectoring and traction control with us as well. So again, we can do a pretty advanced powertrain at, I would say, maybe a fifth or less of the development time of doing this from scratch. So I think that's kind of that's our future really. So continue to do the Halo cars because that builds the brand, and people love them, thankfully. But it's then about using that experience and knowledge and driving that into some of these really cool cars that are being developed by all sorts of companies. The low volume manufacturers, the other brands that
who you cannot
recognize.
disclose.
Not right now.
Would Everrati ever make their own, like new production?
We've been asked to do that by one of our investors actually, but not today. I think for us, we want to be the very, very best that we can in terms of the end-to-end powertrain. Never say never, and actually our supply chain includes people like the guys at Aria. You may know Dr. Andy Palmer's on our advisory board. We've got some great names associated with the business, and actually interestingly, if it was a carbon fiber EV sports car, we've probably got 80% plus of the story there already. But budget and then getting that homologated on street. The big thing is then going to be about homologation and everything that goes with it.
Setting up the sales channel, distribution,
completely,
all that stuff. Okay,
completely.
Fascinating. You going to do any Ferraris?
As a look, I've owned
360 Modnas are they're good, real cheap.
Do you know what? I again never say never. I think I again have been fortunate enough to own a few Ferraris in my time. I think there are Ferraris that are I'm going to say holy grail, less holy grail than others. But look, so we certainly have none on our radar right now. Put it that way. Okay. But it's very doable. And again, really the powertrain we developed for our GT40, is kind of perfect for that environment.
I'm very curious about the GT40, but because I love them, I love the look, I love the shape. But I just think since we're talking about how annoyed people are going to be about, if you think people are going to be, enraged about a 964, just swap out one of the Ferrari engines under glass.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, and the great thing is that kind of the buyers for these cars are changing as well, right? So you've got certainly a younger demographic getting into maybe some of these earlier, or I say not too early, but as you say, the 360s, the various different iterations. My first Ferrari, funny enough, was a 458 Spider, which I absolutely adored. Yes. So not quite yet, is what I would say. But the GT40 we did, that's 800 horsepower, slightly lighter than the original, better weight distribution.
It's from Superform. You're working
Superformance, exactly.
Yes.
So we use we don't
car.
use an original funny old thing chassis on that one.
But they're so available. Like
they really are. Yeah, they really are. They're everywhere. But yeah, we love what we do, and we love the cars. Again, I think we're not doing them to ruin them in any way. We want them to be enjoyed and by a new generation. Just saying about the Pagoda. A client's there, and we had some amazing reviews by Rob Report and by the Times in the UK, saying that it is genuinely better. And when we hear that and read that, you can imagine how that's a really positive thing for all of our team, really. So yeah, that's what's enjoyable.
All right. Well, last question I have, because I asked you about Ferrari because I noticed your logo has a little shades of Ferrari. What does Everrati mean?
Yeah, ever keeping cool cars on the road for, let's say, ever, as long as possible. Rati is the goddess of love, passion, and desire, which is what we all have for our cars. Okay. So and it's got kind of it's Maserati, Ferrari. It's kind of we wanted something that sounded European. Put it that way. Although,
did you come up with that?
We did. I did. Yeah.
Great.
I may have had a couple of glasses of wine.
Oh,
and there may have been other names, and then get on GoDaddy and try and is the domain available?
Exactly.
You know?
I mean, this is a great name because I know this is a huge problem with OEMs. It's like they got to come with a new model name and like they're
Wow.
all taken, and then they got to think globally, and that's why you end up with all
It's
these.
so hard.
Yeah, you come with names that are just numbered alphabet soup. So
Yeah,
it's great
so-
that your name has a good
Has a meaning.
Has a meaning.
Yeah,
So-
and we didn't necessarily know the meaning until we called it that. By the way, the other one on names is interesting. So we were up until whenever it was called Ionic Cars with a C, and we got the domain. We got the we went through the UK kind of checks on names and everything else. We got the sort of trademark and everything was done. And then we got a letter from Hyundai.
then a tiny Korean car
Yeah,
company,
Hyundai.
very small, no one's ever heard
Exactly.
of, with no lawyers at all.
But it was just hilarious because they hadn't spotted this, and we were using it for nearly 2 years, and then we very politely said, "Yes, of course you can. We'll use something else." And I'm glad they did actually because I like what we're now called.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Justin Lunny, founder CEO of Everrati. You can find them on everrati.com, and there's a number, all the socials. There is Everrati on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I even have their what 3 words address in front of me. Burying proved motion, which I've never actually done, but apparently works in ways.
It does.
Everrati, check them out if you have an open mind and are interested in improving the driving experience of your legendary sports car, and that's either road car or off-roader. Perhaps Justin and his team have something for you. But
Amazing.
thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
All right.